Welcome back to another Wheel of Time video. Season 2 of the Wheel of Time TV show has come and gone, and with some distance from the show, I thought it was a good time for a debrief. And I was trying to figure out how to organize my thoughts in a way that makes sense, because I've got lots and I don't want to just ramble. And I'm sure I'm going to have many more thoughts than I put in this video, but I thought a good way to organize this would be to have a good, a bad, and an other category. And my other category is going to be the reserving judgment category. And I think it's an important category because there are a lot of things, I think, in the show that are going to look like one thing now, but when the show has had, you know, to borrow a term from Ali from Wheel Takes, when the show has finished cooking, there are going to be things that are going to look, or, you know, to continue that metaphor, taste different. Because one of the things we have to remember with a show like The Wheel of Time, they're adapting an entire story, is that much like with the books, there are going to be seeds that are planted early that are going to pay off much later on. So with that in mind, let's get into this. But I am going to give a spoiler warning, especially with that reserving judgment category. I am going to be talking about things that happen towards the ends of the books, like the end of the book story. So if you do not want the book story spoiled for you, if you've not read the books, it's not a safe video to watch. I am going to be spoiling things that happen much, much later in the story. So with that out of the way, let's get into this.
Let's be nerdy with Let's Be Nerdy. Let's be nerdy with Let's Be Nerdy.
So, okay, I'm going to just jump into this. And because I personally just like talking about things I like more than talking about things I don't like, I'm going to start off with things I don't like. I'm going to start off with the bad so that I can end on a positive. Okay, the first thing on my bad list, it is probably the stupidest thing on my list. It is something fully left over from season 1. And so, by all rights, I actually probably shouldn't include it, but it irks me so much. It's a change to the lore of the world that does absolutely nothing to the story and may actually help simplify things for new viewers. I'm honestly not sure, but I hate it. And that is calling Lews Therin the Dragon Reborn. She does it here. She talks about how Lanfear loved the Dragon Reborn. And I hate it. Lews Therin was not the Dragon Reborn. Rand is the Dragon Reborn. There are neither beginnings or endings to the turning of the wheel, but there are points in the wheel that are beginnings and endings to part of the turning. And at some point during the infinitely complex cycle of time, there's a time when the world forgets that there is a dragon. And so a new dragon emerges. And then the dragon that follows that is the Dragon Reborn. I know this isn't important, like mentally, I know that, and yet it's like this itching in my skin whenever they say it, and so here it is, number 5 on my bad list. All right, so now let's move on from that idiocy to the first thing on my reserving judgment list, and that is the Idom. Now, I'm going to just say this, I actually really like the design of the Idom, or the Adom, as they say in the shows. My reserving judgment has nothing to do with pronunciation, that doesn't matter. But what I mean is, I like the design, by which I mean I hate it. It is truly animalistic, it is dehumanizing, the way it should be. There's nothing weird or dominatrixy or sexual in it. It is perfect. But what I'm reserving judgment on are the rules of the collar. In the show, it is implied that the collar can either be intentionally removed by the will of the Soldam, or it can come off with the death of the Damani, which, okay, this has some implications. Now, obviously, show changes can happen. I very clearly do not mind show changes, but I know in the story there are a few times in the books where someone is able to open the collar with just their hands. Like Matt is able to do it, and Matt can't channel, so it has nothing to do with channeling. It's just knowing the trick. And obviously this can be adjusted, and the rules and the plot of the show can be adjusted to make it work. But I admit this caused me a bit of a consternation when I realized what the rules were, because my brain immediately jumped ahead to those points and was like, what? So that's it. It is a minor concern. So here it is at the bottom of my reserving judgment list. And now we get to the fun. Number 5, my good list. Number 5 on my good list is Verin. Oh, Good Lord, Varen is fantastic. Now, first of all, Varen is, of course, one of the best characters in the entirety of the Wheel of Time, like books, show, whatever. So the show had a lot to live up to. And it's actually kind of weird because as much as I love Book Varen, and I think she is perfection, I somehow feel more than okay with the show version of her, who is not identical. And I've been trying to figure out why, because one of my hard stances on characters and like adjustments to characters for the show, like from book to the show, is that for characters that I adore, and Varen is definitely one of those, as long as they feel true to me, I'm probably going to be okay with the changes. And Book Varen has this sort of flighty, kind of absent-minded professor quality to her that just isn't there in the show. But the thing is, once you know who Varen is, you realize that a lot of that absent-minded professor quality, while almost certainly not entirely an act, a lot of that she does use as a smokescreen to hide her canniness. And it's that canniness that is in evidence in the show. It's the same to me in the way the show is portraying Nynaeve, in that they are putting a lot of Nynaeve's insecurities and vulnerabilities to the forefront of who she is, whereas in the books, a lot of that part of who Nynaeve is hidden. Like she hides it from everyone, including herself. So while the show is kind of missing a part of who Book Varen is that I do enjoy in the books, and I find it amusing and fun, it still feels like her. She still feels like Varen, like taking everything in, sussing everything out, and doing it for her own mysterious reasons. And Miraciel is just, she's doing such an amazing job. Every moment that Varen is on screen, it delights me. Okay, so we move on from that wonderfulness to the next thing on my bad list. And again, this one is pretty superficial, but it did really annoy me. And that is the dark lighting. In 3, what I can only guess are amazing fight scenes that were so dark that when I was, let me just give you a bit of a behind the scenes. When I do reactions, which I did for this season, I don't usually stop the show and rewind or whatever. And also, I tend to watch them on my computer. It's just easier to film a reaction that way. And, you know, my computer's not a television. It is just a regular computer. I don't have a fancy monitor. It's not a 4K monitor. It's just a pretty average monitor. So often after especially if I really like a show like The Wheel of Time, after I film a reaction, I will watch the show again on my TV so that I can really enjoy it. And I've got a pretty decent TV. I've got like a 4K TV, whatever. And so I can tell you for this Myrddraal fight scene, the Shan-Chan fight scene, and the Avi fight scene, for all of those, when I was watching the episode again, I found myself stopping the show to see if I could adjust my television so that I could see what was happening. And like, I've seen some behind the scenes shots, like this one here of this. And then we've got this other shot of Moraine. We know that it wasn't as dark as it was like in the show when they were filming. Obviously, I'm sure for safety reasons, they had to have it brighter than that. And I do get it, right? Like you want to convey night and danger, but oh, good Lord, I'm watching the show because I want to see it and I can't see it. And it feels like such a waste of amazing stunt work. Like I'm sitting at home going, okay, like up the brightness. Well, now everything looks washed out. Okay, up the vibrancy. Now everything looks orange and blue. Okay, up the contrast. Now everything looks like a cartoon. Like, why can't I see the things that are happening in the show that I'm watching? I don't know about editing or LUTs or whatever. I mean, I play with the lighting in this Lavatar setup I've got all the time, and I still haven't gotten it to look the way I want to. So, you know, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about really, but I don't know how they could improve this or fix this to let us see what's happening, but there's got to be a way. Like when I contrast this with that winter night scene in season 1, that was a night shot. I felt like I could see everything. I know they had ambient lighting with fire, but there's got to be a way because I want to see this, and I don't want to be watching it and then lose my immersion because I stopped to try and fix it so I can see what's happening in the show that I want to watch and be immersed in. Okay, so now to number 4 on my reserving judgment list, and that is Nynaeve at the end of the season. Or actually, what my notes actually say is Nynaeve's uselessness in the finale. Now, I've put this one on my reserving judgment list, but to be perfectly honest, I don't really feel any nervousness or anxiety about this because I'm pretty sure I know where this is going. Nynaeve, as with all of these characters, has a long-term arc. Her arc, obviously, none of them do. Her arc doesn't end this season. And I'm going to quote a commenter here when they were talking about this storyline. A commenter on my reaction to this video said, in this episode, Matt finds himself and Nynaeve loses herself. One of these days, I'm going to get around to making my Matt and Nynaeve comparison video because I really do think that they are two sides of the coin, like they are mirrors to each other. I find it really funny how Matt will get such high praise and love for things that Nynaeve gets raked over the coals for. They're just very, very similar characters. And yeah, I think that's an excellent summation of what we saw happen in this episode. And in the final few episodes with Nynaeve, she is completely losing any sense of self and confidence in her abilities and her purpose as this season has gone on. She came to the tower to protect Egwene, but literally through her actions and her trusting the wrong Aes Sedai, trusting a dark friend, then telling Egwene about what Leandrin said, Nynaeve got the woman that she came to protect enslaved. That's show canon. What happened to Egwene in show canon, it's Nynaeve's fault. And not only that, her inability to control her channeling when testing the Idam, it resulted in a warder's death and another Aes Sedai that she seemed to admire being collared. So that was the two things that Nynaeve had in her bag. She was a protector who literally now, at that point in the story, had only one charge to protect, and she failed. But hey, okay, she at least has her ability to burst into power sometimes. That comes in handy. Oh, wait, no! It got someone killed and someone else enslaved. And what else does she have? Like, in her mind, she has nothing. She has a big downward spiral coming up, and that is a part of her arc in the books. And so it makes sense to me that it would start to show up here. Like, she has an amazing moment, hopefully, coming next season where she comes into some of her power. But, like, in the books, Nynaeve goes through a serious depression that comes after her confrontation with Moggy. And it frustratingly gets played for laughs a lot, but Nynaeve's story does go up and down. And so while I do admit I was expecting some big displays from her, like big displays of power in this final episode, when it didn't happen, I went, okay, well, that's fine. I'm pretty certain I know what's coming. All right, let's move on to the next thing on my good list. And it's what I'm calling the Damodred family drama. Oh, I love this. Now, part of this, I think, I had a bit of a revelation when I was watching the show with my sister. She was talking about how invested she got in the relationships with the adults, like with Swan and Moraine and Moraine and Lan, and how she didn't feel that same level of attachment to the relationships between the younger characters. Like even Nynaeve and Lan didn't hook her that way. And so while I think a lot of us have assumed that a lot of the focus on Moraine has been because of the Rosamund Pike of it all, and I'm not going to say I don't think that's true. She is the biggest name in the show, at least in the English-speaking world, as far as I know. So yeah, she's going to get a lot of the focus. I think there's more at play than that. The show, just by being a visual medium, has forced us all to confront how old these characters are. Like, I don't know about you, but I know for myself when reading, well, intellectually, I know how old they are. In my heart, which sounds so cheesy, but they kind of grew up with me. And so there would be points when reading where I would get frustrated because why were they acting like stupid kids? And then the show comes out and they're like, oh my God. Well, that's why they're acting like stupid kids, because I can see their faces. They are kids. Like, they actually are kids. And so I think some of the focus being shifted from the kids to the adults is just to make it so I don't feel like I'm watching a show about a bunch of kids and not getting invested in what they're doing, because again, they're just kids. Not to mention, Moraine's family is fascinating. Like, even just thinking about the book canon and not the changes made to the show, Moraine in the books is related to pretty much everyone. Her extended family is a gold mine for drama. And I honestly can't believe how much of that I didn't think about in all of these years of reading the books. Like, I've said this before and I'm going to say it again. I feel like the fact that the show has highlighted Moraine so much, it's felt like a bit of a gift to me, because it's given me a new lens to view this story through. And I'm loving it. It's making me think about things that I never did. And so getting to see that in the show, and yes, I know it's changed, like they've aged her up, and Anvir, completely new character and whatever. I loved it. Seeing what the fall of the Damodred family did to her and to those she loved, that must have been awful. And her escape into the Aes Sedai, that must have felt like a relief, only for that to turn into something that no one could have anticipated, that would derail and change her life forever. It's great. And I mean, okay, I guess this should probably be on my reserving judgment list, but I don't know, I feel pretty certain that I'm right about this. And if I am, it's going to be even better. I'm pretty sure they're setting up Anvir here to take the place of Kolavir, which, holy fuck, the drama. This woman who has dedicated her life to restoring her family name, but in doing it the right way, to the point of even sacrificing her son, she would finally get that. She would finally have achieved her goal. And then if the show does things like goes with the book timeline, this would be happening after Moraine is gone. And then if things go the way they do in the books, Rand would be indirectly or directly, I don't know, responsible for the death of Moraine's sister. And that is tragic. And it's so good. It's juicy. All right, moving from good to bad. Next on my bad list, Perrin. Now, this is something I actually feel a little less bad about after reading some comments that Rafe has said about how so far in the show, 3 characters have gotten like character focus episodes. That's Moraine, episode 6 of season 1, Nynaeve, episode 3 of this season, and Egwene in episode 6. Next season, apparently, he said that we're going to see those sorts of episodes for 2 more characters. That is Perrin and Rand. Now, my sister, who is a massive Rand stan, will probably be horrified to hear this, but Rand is not my guy. I like him, but he's not who I read this story for. Perrin, though, especially early books Perrin, I have a huge soft spot for him. And so while there's been nothing in his story, well, beyond the whole Layla thing, which I've talked enough about, there's nothing in his representation, like the show's representation of Perrin, that I'm not liking. I just still feel like I barely know him. Like even this explanation of his abilities and powers. Okay, to be fair to the show, I don't know that it's possible for the show to have lived up to my experience of reading that in the books, because part of what is so amazing in Perrin's abilities for me has got to be the poetry and almost lyrical quality of the way the wolf language is described. And some of that, just by virtue of the nature of the medium, had to be lost in this translation. Like, because what's happening in the books is RJ is describing visual things in beautiful words. And so the show is just doing that backwards. So it's like that thing of, taking something and running it through Google Translate multiple times. You're going to lose something. And even for me, like just doing that the once, just because of how my brain works, for me, words are better than visuals. So some of what the show can't help but lose some of what gives that such beauty for me. And I think I have to just accept that. And so there's this weird push-pull for me where I wish that they'd spent more time explaining his abilities so we could sit with it more. And yet I feel like if they did, I probably would have just had that feeling of missing something for longer. So I don't know. But like I said, like the bad with Perrin is not so much that I'm not liking what I've got. It's that I don't feel like I've gotten enough, and I'm feeling the missing of it. There are other characters that we haven't seen enough of, I guess, like, with Min, for example, or whatever, but I'm not missing it. Whereas with Perrin, I feel the absence of it, and he just doesn't feel entirely 3-dimensional to me yet. And so that's why it's on the bad list. But hearing that he's going to get a focus episode next season makes me feel better about that. So there you go. All right, so let's move on to the next item on my reserving judgment list. And I'm going to be upfront here and just admit this. I'm going to cheat because I added something to my list because I just kept seeing it come up in conversation. And so doing that bumped something else off of the list. And so I'm going to cheat and I'm going to combine them. But okay, what is it? I am talking about the Ashandarai, this dagger tied to a stick with a cloth. Now, okay, I know in one of my videos I actually called it an Ashendari, but I want it on the record that I never, for a second, thought that this was the Ashendari. I thought it was a cool instance of foreshadowing. And I know this has been a discussion, and I know that, like, Brandon Sanderson, who, you know, much closer to production than I am. Like, I'm just a nobody with a YouTube channel. His name is actually on the show, and he's talking with Rafe. He says it's the Ashendari, and he obviously knows more about what's going on than I do, and yet I cannot bring myself to accept that. I don't believe it. Like, even when I was watching with my sister, I'm going to keep bringing her up here, but one of the first things she pointed out is that dagger is not going to stick to that pole. It's literally tied on with a piece of cloth. There is no way that that is a permanent weapon. So even with people who are obviously more connected than me saying it, I don't believe it. I just think it's a cool little wink and a nod to us for what's to come, just like all of the stuff we've seen with, you know, Matt's ocular region that we've seen. It's foreshadowing. But I'm still putting it on my reserving judgment list because who am I? Like, I know nothing. I could be wrong. But okay, the other reason I don't think this is the Ashendari is because of the thing that this bumped off of my reserving judgment list, and that is Thane. Thane in the books is inextricably tied with the dagger. See, this is how I'm cheating here. I'm using the dagger as connective tissue. Thane in the show, he's really downplayed. He's underutilized. We have this amazing actor who really does feel like Thane, and he's just sort of there, but I don't know what the show is planning to do with him. And it's actually kind of weird because, I mean, if I'm perfectly honest, I feel like Thane ended up being underutilized in the books too. Like he never fully lived up to his potential that he had as a character. I know I had theories about him and what he would do at the end, and I know others did too, and they're all way more interesting than what actually ended up happening with him. So I don't know what I want the show to do. Like, do I want the show to have him do something super wild and cool in the show, which would probably end up being a rather massive and foundational change to the canon of the end of the story? Or do I want them to follow the books and have him seem like he's going to be a big deal and then just sort of disappear and then come back and do nothing and whatever? Or do I want them to do what it feels like they're doing and have him just be a regular, if somewhat high-ranking dark friend who just happens to have the same name and some of the same character traits as someone from the books? I don't know. Like, I know they gave us the fade on the door moment, right? Which is a moment in the story, in the books, that is to give us a bit of a hint that Thane is something other, but that nothing came from this season. Like, we saw no implication, no outcome from this moment. So I don't know. And I don't even know what I'm hoping for or expecting from this. But here's where, like, I go back to my cheating here. I do think he's going to want that dagger back. And so I don't think that dagger can be the Ashendari. And so for both of these, I am fully on reserving judgment, waiting and see. I don't know. But okay, I'm going to move on from there to the next thing on my good list, and that is Matt. Oh, I'm so happy with Matt this season. Like, just in general. I've said this before, I personally just did not get attached to Barney Harris. Nothing to do with his portrayal. It was great. It was just that I knew he wasn't going to be Matt long term. But I am fully in on Donal. He feels exactly like Matt to me. I loved pretty much everything about the way he embodied our beloved rogue. And I do have to say, I think what the writers, like, they were forced into to do, they had to get Matt to where he needed to be with what happened with Barney. I think they did an amazing job. And part of that for me is that I do love seeing the mirroring aspect between him and Nynaeve on such blatant display in the show, because it's highlighting something that I see in the books. But, like, to see Matt go from that feeling of, like, I'm worthless, I'm nothing, I steal from my friends, I abandon my friends in season 1, and then, like, here in season 2, to have his confidence shattered by Leandrin, and then to find and feel betrayed by a new friend in Min, and then to feel like he has to abandon his friends again in order to save them, only to find out he's a hero of the Horn. Oh, I loved this arc. Matt in the books, he doesn't feel real to me until after his healing in the Dragon Reborn. But Matt in the show feels real already. Like I feel that dimension in Matt that I feel like I'm missing from Perrin, and I am so attached to him. Knowing the story and knowing that the writers had to fix and adjust things and move things around, I'm amazed with what they were able to do and how they were able to make it work so well in order to get Matt to be where he needs to be. And I know it's a canonical change to make him a hero of the Horn, but I don't know. I love it. I think it works. He's got that horny hero energy. It was a really good way to get him his memories back. Oh, but I will say for the record here, I still think we're going to get the Finn. I think that the show probably didn't want to do it, twice. And I think he still needs to get his real Ashendare, like I said, and combine that with a nice foreshadowing of having Lanfear here yeet Moraine through a doorway. I think we've got a lot of room in the future for some more doorway Finn shenanigans. So yeah, as an aside, that's me cheating again with another theory. But all this to say, everything with Matt made me so happy this season. All right, next on my naughty list, what I'm calling the Moraine plot holes. There are two really that stood out for me. Number one, what the heck was she doing at the end of episode 1? Like, she's just found out there are Fades chasing Bail Domon, and so she gets on a horse and runs out into the night. Like, why? What was her purpose? Like, this is just dumb. The only thing I can think is that she maybe knew they were after her, and so she was luring them away from the others, but even that it's monumentally stupid, and Moraine is not stupid. She just isn't. I don't know what she was thinking. It's dumb. The other Moraine plot hole, it bothered me the first time, and then I was watching with my sister, and she had the same. I'm going to keep bringing her up because my sister's amazing, but whatever. She had the same thought I did, and I was like, okay, I guess it wasn't just me. Moraine has this poem about Lanfear that Lan swipes from her bag. There is no way in hell that Moraine did not realize that was missing, and yet she shows absolutely no concern for that. And Moraine, again, not dumb. She has to have seen that it was gone. She could probably be able to deduce who has it. And she knows that Lan is now with other Aes Sedai. And so, what? Like, it's one of those things I think we're just not supposed to think about. And yet it just flies in the face of everything I know about her. And it was this itch while watching. Why isn't she worried about this super incriminating poem that just sort of disappeared from her stuff and could be with a bunch of people that maybe she doesn't know and trust? Why? All right, I don't have much else to say about that, so I'm just going to go on to the next on my reserving judgment list, and that is Egwene killing Rhaena. Now, first of all, let me just say, not mourning Rhaena's death. She is a despicable fictional person, but Egwene killing her is a big deal. Egwene killed her in cold blood after Rhaena was no longer a threat. That was actually Ishi's plan, to do something to Egwene that would force her to do something really dark, and she did it. Like, Ishi's plan worked. And the reason I think it happened, like the reason this worked, is because the show did remove Nynaeve from that moment. Nynaeve would have stayed her hand like she did in the books. Like, she wasn't going to kill her in the books, but Nynaeve definitely stopped Egwene from doing something horrible in the books. And so without Nynaeve there, Egwene really, really goes dark here. And I don't think that this undermines one of the central theses of the book, which is that our crew, like, they are better together. They are stronger together. They should not be isolated like this. They should be connected. In fact, I feel like this reinforces that thesis because this is not a good thing. Egwene should not have killed somebody. Killing people is bad. Egwene was pushed to this moment exactly because she was isolated. If our crew hadn't been separated the way they were, none of these horrors would have happened in the first place. But what I'm reserving judgment on is, what are they going to do with this? Killing someone, again, kind of a big deal. Killing someone in cold blood who is no longer a threat to you, as horrible a person as Rhaena was, that is a dark thing to do. And I hope, and I admit, I do have faith in the show based on what they've seen so far, but I hope that the show doesn't forget that. I hope that the show doesn't go, well, we don't like Rhaena, so it doesn't matter that Egwene kind of committed an act of unnecessary, vengeful murder. That won't have any consequences. Like, I don't want that to be the way things go, and so reserving judgment. All right, so let's move on to the next good thing on my list. And okay, I know I've talked about her a lot already, but come on, you know me. You know I have to talk about Nynaeve. Once again, I am so ecstatic this season with how she is being portrayed in the show. Like I said when I was talking about Varen, the show is exposing things that I fully think are there in the books, but they're often like hidden behind the words, kind of. And it makes me so happy because I feel like people who are watching the show are seeing the Nynaeve that I have known and loved and rooted for decades. Her vulnerability, her insecurity, her deep and unending love for the people she cares about, what she is willing to sacrifice. It's all on display. Her accepted test in the show, I've said it before, but I really do like it so much better than in the books. It felt more personal, more revealing about who she is, especially the first and the third arches. Her first arch in the books, in the text, it feels super generic to me, and the one in the show lets us see where she came from, and I loved that. Her third arch test in the books, I know that's the one that I think that it's supposed to grip me the most, but it's so fast. And even on rereads, I feel like it's too early in her and Lan's relationship in the books for me to feel the emotion that I think I'm supposed to feel there. Plus, and I didn't realize this until the show, but it also feels super silly to me now that Nynaeve in the books, especially at that point in her story, that her ideal future would be to be a queen in Malkir and not a wisdom in the Two Rivers. Like, this, being a wisdom in the Two Rivers, makes so much more sense for who she is. And giving her that time to have that life that she lived there, while obviously it's gut-wrenching because of how it ends, it also, because it was time, like time that I had to fill in my head, but it was still time, it gave me time to believe in the love between her and Lan there. And oh my God, it's going to be so interesting when they meet up again. Oh, and I've said it enough, but I'm going to say it again here. I love the way the show is showing her relationship with Elaine. They bicker, but I don't see them hating each other. I see a friendship growing there, and it's one of my favorites in the books, and so I'm really excited to watch it take root. But all of that, okay, it's amazing. But you know what I think? I'm not sure, but right now, anyway, this is true. What I think might have delighted me the most this season with Nynaeve is her humor. She had several funny moments this season with dialogue that felt real and natural. She had some in the first season, but I don't know, they didn't land as well as these ones this season. Like this moment, like the whole I have enough character, that moment, it completely cracked me up. The don't encourage her moment. And the one that actually made me laugh the most, but apparently only worked on me because I don't hear anybody else talk about it, was when she says to Loyal, yes, your name sings in his ears, now get up. I loved that line. Nynaeve is, in my opinion, probably the funniest character in the books. Like her humor comes naturally from her personality. And so it was just exciting to me to see that come to the forefront here. All right, let's move to the final item on my bad list, and that is Rand cutting the weaves on Moraine's shield. Now, once again, I'm going to say here I was fully influenced by my sister because, okay, if you've been watching my channel, you know I have been certain since season 1 that Moraine was shielded with tied-off weaves. Plus, I had a theory that those weaves were going to be untied by Swan. I feel like the show had laid a nice foundation for that with showing a swan untying knots, and I think that would have been lovely and satisfying and romantic, and it would have worked thematically, but that's obviously not what happened. Rand just cuts them. Lan somehow knows how to tell Rand what to do, and he just cuts the weaves. And I found it so anticlimactic and unsatisfying. But I have to say, I kind of figured that I was just bitter. You know, like I had a pet theory, my theory was wrong, and I figured I was being butthurt about it because, you know, I wanted to be right and whatever. And so I didn't really trust my feelings on this one. But then I watched this with my sister, and I have to say, just up front, I did not tell her my theory. I didn't tell her anything. She didn't know about tied off weaves. She didn't know about my theory about Swan. But when it was revealed that it was a tied off weave, the first thing my sister said was, okay, now let's get Swan in here to untie them. That was her instinct, because the show has established that Rand doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. Like when Moraine says to Rand, I trust you, my reaction and my sister's later, when we watched it together, again, I had not said anything to her. Reaction was, I don't trust you. Because again, we know Rand does not know what the fuck he's doing. Lan can't channel, so he knows less than Rand, and yet somehow he's telling Rand what to do here? And it just works. And okay, I'm chalking it down to Ta'Viren and stuff, and it's fine. And okay, to be honest, having Swan come in this moment and untie the weaves would undermine some of the stuff that I think that they're setting up for next season. Like, because if Swan did that now, they would have needed time for her and Moiraine to talk. And I think part of what happened here, like in this scene, everyone is focused on what Swan did to Moiraine, which was horrible in this moment, but people seem to somehow ignore what Moiraine did to Swan. Like, Moraine's actions in this moment have set everything up. That she has set the stage for Swan to be deposed and stilled by everything that she did here. They have both betrayed each other horrifically. Now, I think both of them know enough about each of their motivations to understand the reasoning, and I do still think that their end game, good Lord, I do not think that they are setting this up to like be a breakup so that now they can have the Tom and Brynn garbage, because I hate both of those relationships. They are nonsense. They detract from the story. And okay, I gotta admit that I have to say that is my opinion. That is not fact, but I do. Oh my God, both of those romances, and I'm huge air quotes, kind of ruin things in my opinion. Like, they take good characters and they demean them. I hate both of those relationships. They're gross. So I still think that Swan and Moiraine are endgame. But that betrayal that Moiraine has done here has to land in order for things to be set up for next season. So having time in this moment for Swan to come and untie the weaves just wouldn't work. But everything could have been done in a different order. I don't know, you didn't have to do it in this moment. And so I don't like this. I think I said in a video talking about this, once I realized what was about to happen, my brain was like, okay, fine, just get it over with so we can move on. Because, we do need to get past this, but it wasn't the moment that I think this could have been, or that I think the story needed or deserved. I can get past it, but I don't like it. And I think it's more than me just being butthurt about my pet theory. It's anticlimactic, and it doesn't satisfy me. All right, I'm going to move on to my final item on my reserving judgment list, and that is Alanna and her warders and all of the time that we've spent with them. Now, the reason this made it to number 1 is that if this doesn't go anywhere, it's going to be a waste. But I am giving the storyline, I'm giving it a lot of leeway because I think I know what it's building to. I think giving Alanna and her relationship with her warders so much focus is to make it more of a gut punch when, at least one of her warders dies later on. And then when this particular Aes Sedai, Alanna, that we have come to trust and believe is on our side, when she does something unthinkable. Like that moment in book 6, it's bad enough in the books, but imagine how hard it can land if we have spent several seasons thinking, oh man, I'm so glad we got Alanna on our side. I'm so glad she's in our corner. She's our ride or die. And it's not just the time spent with Alanna, specifically her. I think these conversations that we see with her warders, like with Maxim in particular, talking about how they mask their bond, I think I've talked about this before, but I think that is foreshadowing. I think Maxim is going to die, and I think Alanna is going to see her choice to give Maxim that level of freedom, respecting his autonomy. I think those are things that she's going to see as a reason for his death, and that's going to inform some of her decisions in the future. And in this storyline, I'm actually even going to include this one scene that I've heard a lot of hate for. Scene where Alanna walks up to Lan while he's peeing. To me, this works, again, if we are building to something with Alanna. This scene is a woman who clearly is not respecting Lan's privacy. She is crossing a line here. And it's an obvious line. It feels awkward to watch because it's an obvious line. But again, to me, if this is building to where I think it's building, it makes sense. It's showing us that she will cross lines. This is a line that she doesn't think is important. And her story is going to get to a point where she is going to cross a line that is more than just awkward to watch. But like I said, this is on my reserving judgment list because of all, like, if all of this doesn't go anywhere, then these moments are going to feel like wasted time that we could have spent with pretty much anything else. And so I have to wait and see where this goes before I can really give it a pass. So here it is, top of my reserving judgment list. But okay, of course, I said at the beginning, I want to end on a positive, and so here you go. The top of my good list, the best thing about this season to me was the villains. And I'm fully cheating here because each of them could have been their own point, but I want to talk about all of them. Ishi, Leandrin, and Lanfear. My God, they're incredible. Okay, first of all, let's start off with Ishi. I'm just going to tell you, just for me, I find the Moradin version of Ishi a more compelling version of Ishi than Balsamon. So I'm really glad we didn't spend a lot of time getting to know old Fire Eyes Ishi here. This man, the philosopher who he just wants to die. Like, he's so much more interesting to me. And Faris's interpretation of him, oh, good Lord, I like him. Like, I actually feel bad for him. Dude, he just wants to get off the ride and he can't. And it's horrible because obviously to get off the ride, he has to destroy the ride for everyone else. That's the only way to do it. But I get it. He's likable. And then there's Leandrin. And what can I say about Leandrin that I haven't already said? She's probably the biggest surprise for me in the show. Leandrin in the books is, for me, she's like a mustache twirling villain. She's tying our favorites to the railroad tracks, and she has no dimension. I don't care about her background at all. I just hate her, and that's it. But oh my God, Leandrin in the show is so interesting. I want to know everything about her story. I feel bad for her. I see layers in her. Like, I really do think that she sincerely cares for Nynaeve, but she will still hand her over to slavers because of the choices she's made. Like, she has no choice. I cannot wait to see more of her in the show, which is incredible to me because in the books, Leandrin is interchangeable with any of the Black Aja sisters to me. I don't see anything specifically interesting about book Leandrin, but in the show, she's incredible. I am fascinated. I love her. And then there's Lanfear. And like, okay, in my mind, the way I actually think of the show, the season is divided in two halves. There's a Leandrin half and then the Lanfear half. And Leandrin sort of hands the baton over to Lanfear, or I guess actually Lanfear kind of grabs the baton from her in this moment with Leandrin's son. And I don't know, it's really, really cool. I do have to say, in the books, Lanfear, never one of my favorite villains. Like, I find her turn in book 2 as Selene annoying, hilariously. So does my sister, which is funny. But like her playing the simpering damsel in distress. So think of the glory. It's so transparent to me. I honestly didn't even realize it was supposed to be a surprise the first time I read it that she was Lanfear because she was so obvious. And like, with apologies to Matt Hatch from the Dusty Wheel, I just never found her compelling in the books. But Lanfear in the show, I cannot take my eyes off of her. And it's not just because she's gorgeous. She has so much depth and charisma. And much like with Leandrin, I find myself wanting to know more about her story, more about her relationship with Luz and with Ishi. And weirdly enough, I feel like I'm kind of bummed that Ishi ruined her plans because I kind of want to know what she was going to do. But also, I'm not, because, oh my God, holy fuck, we have a new villain unlocked, like Moggy, and given what they've done with the other villains, Moggy's gonna be amazing, I'm sure. Like, oh, I love these books. I love The Wheel of Time, I do, but the villains in the books, they're often a bit underwhelming and maybe less than competent, and it's weirdly, maybe a weird thing I'm about to say, it's kind of a testament to how good RJ's writing is that I don't find it upsetting or frustrating, or I don't know. The lackluster nature of the villains in the books doesn't detract from the story from me. And yet it is so nice to see. It's so exciting to see them amped up. They have more presence, more oomph, more power in the show. I love everything about the villains. So there you have it. My top 5 good, my top 5 bad, and my top 5 other reserving judgment items from season 2 of the Wheel of Time. What about you? What's on your list? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like my content, you want to support me, I do have a Patreon that is always linked in the description below. To my patrons, as always, I am so grateful for you. Thank you so much for your support. Really, I couldn't do this without you. And I say that and it sounds like nothing because I say it all the time, but it's true. Thank you so much for your support. And with that, I will end this here. So please like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.